Okay, guys. So today we're going to challenge ourselves in some of our preconceived notions. Everyone sees me in the back there. Hi. We're going to try to dispel some myths that we have on some very important, crucial topics in Jewish thought and practice. It's been one of the themes of my talks here so far. And that's when I talk about Jewish history. You say, wait a minute, Rabbi, Jewish history? What does Jewish history have to do with anything? And how is that central? We kind of think of Jewish history as, what happened in the past, So if I tell you stories about, Moses and, the Torah and Egypt and, the Hasmoneans, that's history, and that's not relevant to us today. But we find in Judaism as history being linked to life itself that we have today. So that's the overarching idea. We're going to talk about some of the famous statements that I'm sure some of y'all have heard that we find in Jewish literature about history. And we're going to try to use that, extrapolate the meaning from that, and see how that plays into the overarching goal that we have as Jews in our life, not only for us, but for all of humanity. How does that sound as something we should try? What do y'all say? Let's do it? Okay, so I think just as a start, we kind of think, or maybe we don't think about this, but if we were to think about it, we were to perhaps imagine, like we're thrown into this world without any instructions. It's not like we remember, we put on the glasses, 4 seconds before they explode. Everyone knows what I'm talking about? Put the glasses on and you got to throw them off before they explode because they tell you your next mission. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So, like, we're coming in blind, and we just imagine that our life is to just, let's do the best with what we got. Let's take the cards that we're dealt and try to make the best of it. That's, I think, that's what most people feel. But the Torah tells us that there's this whole grand universal vision. There's this plot, this plan, this thing that has to happen. That us as the Jewish people, as the chosen people, we'll see what that means as well, we're tasked with fulfilling a necessary and vital function and mission for all of humanity. And if we don't do it, we're in big trouble. In fact, not only us, all of humanity. So that kind of opens up, this whole new idea, this whole new world, where it's not just we're here and we're in this world and we didn't have a say about it. And maybe if we had the option, maybe we could opt out, we could opt in or opt out, or, we're here and let's try to make the best of it. It's more than that. We're here by design. We're here to accomplish something very specific. And we have to do it. We have failure is not an option. And when we talk about history, it's not just about the past, but it's also the present and the future, which is this big vision. And it got started in the past. And it's continuing today, and it's going to be culminated in sometime in the future. So that's why we talk about history and Jewish history. It's not just about retelling past events. It's about opening up the door to this vista of a perspective, of a mission that we have and that we're responsible as Jews. So let's just start here with a question. So everyone here has heard of the term chosen people. Is that right? Is everyone familiar with that term? So what does it sound like? It sounds like we're the Jewish people. We're better than everyone else. We're God's favorites. God has a bunch of kids. We're the fan favorite. That's what it sounds like.
That's what people who are not Jewish think that we think.
Yeah, well,
we're a lot of hatred towards Jews, I think.
Maybe. That's a good argument. That the Jews think that they're, But remember, the Japanese flag has a big red circle because we're the best, because the sun comes to us first. And, we just had the Olympics a couple of years ago. We'll have them in a couple of years. And every country is holding up their flag, and we're special. And what do the Muslims say? Dar al-Islam, the nation of Islam. If you're not with us, we hate you. And everyone seems to say that. Yeah, okay. But the fact that one group feels superior, that's not so unique. So if you want to use that as a way to explain Jew hatred or anti-Semitism, maybe. But we have this idea. It's not just about being different; it's being chosen by God. What does that even mean? Like, we're all so used to that term, but what does it mean? Anyone has any ideas they want to share here? What does it mean we're chosen? What does that mean? Booyah. So we're chosen for a mission. Okay, we're all okay with that?
Is that true in general, though? Is that like universal even for like Melchites as well as
That they're. Well, you could say it on an individual level. Everyone is chosen, and everyone has. It's like the participation trophy, But no. But that idea is that everyone has something special that they could contribute. Everyone has something that's admirable that we could learn from. We're told you should learn from everyone. Who is the wise man? He who learns from everyone, because everyone can contribute. But here is on a cosmic, or a national level. We're talking about all the purpose of all of humanity. The Jewish people are chosen. We'll see that's actually not a perfectly correct term. But we are tasked with this responsibility. And a responsibility that also equals a certain commitment. And that when you have the responsibility, on one hand, you have the privileges that are linked to that responsibility. On the other ones, you have the responsibilities. Obviously, you have what you need to do, and you're obligated to do. And if you don't do it, there's going to be consequences for that as well.
There's the term, we are chosen to be Ola Goim.
Ola Goim,
In order that,
light to the nation.
so basically, we need to be living up to a higher standard and serving as an example to everyone else on how to behave.
So what Ron is saying is that we're chosen because we're going to teach the entire. We're light to the nation. We're going to inspire the nations of the world. We're going to lead the nations of the world towards achieving whatever it is, whatever that goal is. And you look at it. There's not I don't want to say a single, but I don't want to make a generalization. But if you look at any movement that's designed to change the world, that's the betterment of society, whatever that may be. It could be even for profit, right? But any vision that's a universal vision that's introduced, you have Jews at the helm. So one can make the argument, like Ron's making, is that the Jews have a certain quality that is, we want to change the world, and we want to inspire, we want to teach, we want to improve, we want to make the world a better place. And I'm going to agree with that almost entirely. I want to start here, so just introduce some text. Who here has heard of the idea that this is a 6,000-year world? Has anyone heard that? Y'all know, so what year are we familiar with the Jewish dates?
5,700.
Okay, 57 and change. Let's see. The actual number is 5775. Now, Hatashsa.
I don't remember what year.
5,775. Now, what is this counting from, or what is it counting to? Anyone knows?
6,000.
Okay, to 6,000. Okay, that's the end point. And what's the beginning point? Well, what's zero? What happened at zero?
Wow.
Bereshit. Bereshit happened at zero? That's not... Huh? Okay, so if you look at... If we say we have a 6,000-year-old world, we're going to have some problems because it seems that there's somewhat copious evidence that the world is significantly older. What's actually clear that the Jewish calendar of 5,775, that starts ticking not from Genesis, not from Bereshit, but rather from Adam. Not only that, not just Adam, beginning of the Adam story, but rather the not the creation of Adam, but the mitigation or limitation of Adam. What happened? Okay, so that's a side point. But what happens before Adam? Right, those 6 days that we talk about, that is not part of the calendar. Why? Just a simple way to understand that. We know that the sun, which regulates days for us, right? We see the sun again; it's a new day. That shows up on day 4. So what marked the days of Sunday to Monday, Monday to Tuesday, before Wednesday arrives, and we have sun introduced to the picture? That's an open question. I don't know. I don't have the answer. All I know that it's a question. You like that, huh? Was it 24 hours without a sun? It was just time? Or was it something else? I don't know. It's a good question. But clearly, this indicates that these are not regular days and these are not regular time capsules the way we have today. And in fact, when you open up some of the Jewish sources, we find that on day 6, we meet Adam, we meet Eve, they have children, they have these instructions not to sin, they sin, what that means is a side point. But either way, we know you cannot be born and have children in the same day. It's not likely, right? You need to grow up and you need to, you need to have some, you produce the children, you got to wait some time for gestation, and then you have to have the baby being born.
Also not normally manufactured.
That would also not be, that would seem to be not. So when we start counting, it starts from Adam after he's out of the garden, after that whole Garden of Eden story. Those 7 days are not part of this counting. We start counting, and then we have 6,000 years. So that's the idea that everyone's heard of. Where is this from? What's 6,000 years from? What's this idea? What happens after 6,000 years? Huh? Okay. What? So let me tell you what the source is. You guys tell me. Okay, you guys tell me what the source. I'll read you the source. This is where it comes from. The whole idea comes from the source in the Talmud. It is in the book of Sanhedrin. It's on page 97a. If you want to, I can show it to you in a book if you want to see it. And it says as follows. Huh?
You memorize all 9 seminary, you see it.
I have it written down, but
He knows not to go.
yeah.
Not to say that's,
So it says like this. I have to read it in Hebrew because we have some Hebrew speakers. My policy is that I read the original Hebrew. Some people understand Hebrew. Shishat alafim shana have alma. So it's not exactly Hebrew. Alma is olam. It's Aramaic. So the world is 6,000 years. Shne alafim tohu, shne alafim Torah, shne alafim Mashiach, which means 2,000 years tohu, which means chaos, 2,000 years Torah, and 2,000 years Mashiach. That's the source. 6,000 years, and it's broken down to 2,000 years tohu, which means chaos, 2,000 years Torah, which means Torah, and 2,000 years Mashiach, which means Messiah. So, what does this even mean? How do we understand this? So we have 6,000 years, we have a starting point for history, we have an end point for history, and we have 3 different epochs or different eras or time periods, and they're labeled as Tohu, chaos, Torah, and Mashiach. What does this even mean? I thought Mashiach was some warrior or some great scholar who comes and is a man. It's not 2,000 years. I don't know anyone who's 2,000 years old. Even Adam only lasted
Does it
to
go in this
930.
order or just...
Yeah, so what does this even mean? Like, do we have these time periods? It seems like it's, when we're breaking it out to 3 sections, and it's some sort of progression, and it ends at 6,000, and what happens then? And what does it mean that these 3 time periods and how we're told, well, this is Tohu, and this is Torah, and this is Mashiach? What does this mean? And what does this teach us about what this entire life and existence and purpose is trying to bring towards? We start off at point A, right? There's this purpose for the world, and this 6,000 years, we have 6,000 years to fulfill a mission. Now, I'm skipping a few steps here logically, but logically, once you assume the existence of an intelligent creator to all of humanity and all of the universe, you also assume a purpose. Is that right? That's a fair assumption, right? If God created the whole world, right, then he must have had a purpose. Like, intelligent entities don't do very complex creations without a reason. So that part I skipped. But we're assuming God exists, and this purpose is going to be brought out by this time that we have, 6,000 years allotted towards this purpose. What's the purpose, and how do we get there? And also, what else do we learn from this statement? Well, it also tells us that Mashiach is not just an entity, it's a 2,000-year progression. And we have, so the first 2,000 years is chaos. What does that mean? What's chaotic about the first 2,000 years of existence? And what changes at 2,000 years?
Torah makes it unchaotic.
Oh, okay, Torah is a clarity, okay.
And then if you all study Torah, then Mashiach.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty simple.
What year is it? What year is Sinai?
Sinai, I think, well, the secular date, in the Gregorian calendar, I guess that would be 1312 before the Common Era, according to Jewish sources. So we're talking about 2,000 and maybe 500 years into this 6,000 year period. Well, that's clear. Okay, so let's try to break this down. What happens in year 2000? I'm going to throw out a keyword here. You guys tell me if you've heard of it. Another keyword. Tikkun Olam. Who has heard of the term Tikkun Olam? Have you heard of it? What does it mean, Tikkun Olam? Perfecting the world. More precisely, is there more precise? Repair or to fix the world. Right? This is a core element of Jewish life, of Jewish practice, of Jewish ideology. Fixing the world. What does that imply? If we have to fix the world, what does it tell us about the world? It's broken. We want our money back, right? We got a broken product. What's the warranty, right? The world is flawed. It's broken. What's broken about it? It seems like such a wonderful world. Look at the trees and the grass and the clouds and the water, and it seems to be very organized, We're almost exactly 93 million miles away from the sun. If we were a little closer, a little further away, we wouldn't not be able to harbor life on this planet, It seems to be very balanced. We have all these functions, and everything seems to work very, very well. What's broken? What would you change? You want to have another arm coming out of your chest to just multitask? What's so broken about our world that this is the mission to fix the world? Oh, maybe, okay, that's broken. But what's the world is fundamentally broken. So yes, there's some element, there's strife amongst people, and there's disunity, and there's infighting, and then there's, yes, okay. What is at the core of all the problems of the world? Injustice, okay, but why is there injustice? Huh? People. I like people. Well, some people. Most people. Huh? People are selfish. And when someone's selfish, what don't they see? What else don't they see? Huh? It's not holy. Okay, but what would it look like if it was holy? It's broken. We see fighting. We see people being selfish. We see lack of holiness. Huh? Humans have lots of flaws. We know that. That's true. So we're broken. Okay, but there's something here that's missing here. What else is missing, guys? So what's essentially so flawed that the world is so broken that we need to fix it? We don't see God. More than people turn away from God. The world is designed. Imagine this. Imagine you have the most exquisite painting or the most exquisite creation or anything as we can't think of anything as expansive and exhaustive as the world, but there's so much detail, so many creatures, such beauty, such perfection, but the artist doesn't sign his name. You look around, you don't see God. You could spend your entire life and not encounter even once the author, the painter, the crafter, the creator, the architect of this wonderful existence. Right? That is why the world is broken. We say, Tikkun Olam b'malchut shakai, which means to fix the world with the kingdom of God. The Jewish mission, the world is imperfect. The world is imperfect because it's broken because there's something fundamentally flawed with the world. That the world, the most important thing, the most important element of existence is God, if God exists. But we're supposing that He does. Right? And the most important thing in the world is God as well. Yet humans, and most humans, could live their lives without even acknowledging this fact even once. And that is something fundamental wrong. And I'll make the argument.
I don't know if I believe that. I mean, they might not see God, He might not sign His name, but I think most of the world does believe in God.
Okay, maybe most of the world does, but it's still, even we all believe in God here today. But even for us, how many days do we actually not cognizantly acknowledge that? Cognitively and cognizantly. I think cognizant is a word as well. Cogently. Thank you. How much of our lives is actually dominated by that? Most of the time, well, we don't see God. We don't have any sort of interface with our senses of God, right? And if we could, yes, we could check the box. We're not atheists. Oh, no. We're not atheists, We believe, of course. But is that really the overarching fundamental element of our viewpoint, of our consciousness? I'm sorry? Well, much more than I'm saying, much more than just interpreting His will. How much of a dominant factor in our lives is the idea of God? I would argue it's very minimal, unfortunately, because we're in this broken world. Now, someone made the argument that the majority of the world does believe in God. Could we say maybe if the majority of the world does believe in God, maybe we're very far along this process of fixing the world? Could we make that argument?
Aren't people becoming less secular over time?
Well, for sure. Well, I think there's micro trends and the macro trends. But
the first 2,000 years where
Some people
everybody
use
were
God as a
worshiping
way to
idols.
separate themselves. Some people use God to try to bring the community together.
okay, but if someone really truly believed in God, right? If society accepted that, then it would be a much more just society. Then the injustice would disappear, and okay, so they get slight variations go a long way. Like if you set the rocket to try to reach the moon, just a quarter of an inch off, it might be hundreds of miles away, right? Yes. Okay. I would tend to agree to that, but we look at the world today and compare it to the way it was maybe 2,500 years ago, 2,000 years ago, where people were slaughtered for nothing, petty criminals in Rome, which was a fairly sophisticated society. They were slaughtered just by the tens of thousands. Okay, but maybe that kind of religion is not the religion we're looking for. We're looking actually, just not just a religious and God, and the Jewish God. So let's start with this chaos, right? So we start off the world, chaos. God is not around anywhere, right? No one testifies to the fact. No one lives by that ideal, right? No one teaches that that reality. And then what happens? We meet Abraham, and the Talmud actually does say, we know that Abraham, if you do the actual dates, Abraham's born in the year 1948 of this 2,000 year of since Adam. Which is an easy way to remember it is 1948 was the foundation of the state of Israel. And then the Talmud says elsewhere that at the age of 52, Abraham achieved a certain degree of perfection of this God ideal. Thus, Abraham begins this process of bringing the world towards its perfection. He was, of course, only one man who developed the movement, but this Abrahamic mission, right, is the beginning of undoing this problem, this fundamental flaw that the world has. Suddenly, we don't only have chaos; we have this one voice of reason. And you know what? I would make the argument that Abraham changed and reformed the world more than anyone else, because the principles that Abraham introduced that eventually gained, as we see today, gained such wide appeal and acceptance. These are the ideals that brought the world to its much more sane existence that it has today. We know that Abraham grew up in a world with child sacrifice. That was commonly accepted practice. We have the Torah. Torah says, "Don't sacrifice your kid." Who would even think of sacrificing a kid for some idol or some pagan? A pagan deity. Would anyone consider doing that? Take your kid and put him in the fire because the gods want? Huh? Well, okay, so which is a good question, because we see when Abraham is tested, he is tested to do specifically that he repudiated with his faith, which makes it, which obviously it augments the challenge. Like, whoa, what's going on over here? God is telling me to do that which I specifically came out against. It's a good point. But ultimately, that was the test to see, how dedicated are you to the ideal, or are you, to the reality, or to the position of what that reality implies, right? So we could say now that God's test of sacrificing his son Isaac, which we know he didn't ultimately do, but what was that test about? Perhaps what God was telling him: are you rejecting the way of life because you find it barbaric? You find child sacrifices being barbaric? Or are you really believing God? Are you rejecting the negative or are you embracing the positive? Maybe Abraham could have said, you know what, this is insane. This whole child sacrifice and these whole multiple gods, and even we know thousands of years later, they still had the Romans and the Greeks. The Roman historian Dio Cassius writes that they had in excess of 30,000 gods. Like, that didn't end with Abraham, but Abraham perhaps could be repudiating the way of life of the pagans, but not necessarily embracing God. So God tells them, how are we going to test that? We're going to test that with the ultimate test of God will tell you to behave like one of them. Well, then you have to choose. Are you embracing the God ideal, or are you just rejecting the barbaric way of life of your society? Good point that you brought up. So, where were we? What happens? So now we have Abraham. The idea of God is brought onto the world. 2,000 years later, we have Torah. Well, what's Torah? How does Torah change this? Who gives us the Torah? What is this? How is the Torah transitioning this ideal of God into something more, into further progress in fixing the world? So we know if Abraham has the idea, so it's one man. It's one chink in the armor of this broken world. Right? We're doing the smallest thing of trying to dismantle and to fix, to dismantle what was broken, I guess, or to fix what was broken. And now comes along Torah. What is Torah? Torah is the mission statement of the Jewish people. Right? Torah is when a nation, an entire nation, not just one individual or one family or one movement, it's an entire nation that will exist for eternity, is accepting upon themselves to fulfill this mission. It's no longer a bunch of individuals, even a band of individuals, even Abraham and Isaac and their kids and the whole tribe of them. Now it's a nation that's enshrined for eternity to fulfill this mission. And the Torah is how we're going to do it. I'll explain how that works in a second. And what happens with Messiah? Messiah is the idea of this gaining such mass approval, of this idea of God being disseminated throughout the entire world, that this basically becomes what everyone believes in. And we find this remarkable statement. Maimonides writes, he says, what's the role of Christianity and Islam? I know we're going to talk about Islam now. What's the role in this grand picture? How are they, because they seem to be, if you look at Islam, Maimonides at least, he writes that Islam is the same theology as we have. But they're, like we said, they're a little bit different, radically different, you would say, in how we apply that. Maimonides writes is that we look at Islam, especially because remember, Islam, who do they come from? They come from Ishmael, the son of Abraham. So they have the Abrahamic influence. And we know that Christianity in Jewish philosophy comes from Edom, which is Esav, which is the son of Isaac. Yes. In Jewish writing, Esav, Jacob's twin brother, Esau in English, he is the forebearer of Rome, which we know pivoted into Christianity.
Wait, based on what?
I'm sorry, I said
What are you basing that on?
well, that's a widely.
It's just an anecdotal thing that's accepted.
Well, it's in Jewish philosophy. So, for example, what was that? Everyone's like, there's someone there on the Skype. I was like, everyone say hi.
Hi, Zoe.
This is Zoe.
Hey, Zoe. Oh, right.
I was like, what? This is like where'd that come from? So, for example, we find Rashi quotes the Talmud as Rabbi Judah the Prince and Antoninus, who's Marcus Aurelius Antoninus became the Roman emperor in the year 161, that they are the souls of Isaac and Jacob. I'm sorry, of Jacob and Esau. Wherein the full manifestation of Jacob came to fruition with Rabbi Judah the Prince, whereas Rabbi Judah the Prince, colleague and contemporary, with whom he was actually quite friendly, Antoninus, that is the full manifestation of Esau. But there's many, many sources that talk about that. I could give you a whole list if you email me after the class. So Maimonides writes that the Christians and the Muslims, our cousins, so to speak, they are also influenced by Abraham, and they're also doing somewhat of their part of fulfilling the Abrahamic mission of fixing the world. And we look at the world today, someone even mentioned this, the idea of one God. Just those words were so foreign 2,000 years ago. The Jewish people in Romans, I'm not sure if it was the Romans or the Greeks, they were persecuted as being atheists. Because this idea of one invisible God where all the power is coalesced into one entity, that was a foreign idea. It said that we mentioned the Romans had 30,000 gods because there's a power for this and a power for that. Everything has its power. There's the God of fertility and the God of, mountains and the God of everything, right? Everything has it because, there was a compartmentalization of the powers for every individual thing. And the Jews come up with this radical idea, or they thought it was, the radical idea of this one God that has all the power. And they were persecuted for that. But what about today? Today we live in a world with this idea. You could discuss it pretty much with anyone, more or less, throughout the, entire world, the Western world at least. This is an idea that has billions of adherents to. And, in the big picture, we say this is far along the line of Messiah, of mass dissemination, of global, of universal acceptance of this idea is the end game. And then what does the world look like at the end? What does the world look like once everyone, that's a fixed world. Suddenly the idea of God is not so distant. Suddenly the idea of God is not hidden from everyone. Everyone accepts it, more or less, of course. But the idea of the force that's behind this wonderful creation, this wonderful universe, right? That idea of it being, totally invisible in the world. Well, that's entirely gone as well, and that's the full manifestation of Messiah, and this the full completion of the Jewish mission. Now, let's try to see how this plays out to us. So that's a good question.
Still fighting between each other, saying, "Oh, my religion's better," and stuff like that.
Listen, I know it's a very popular adage that people say, "Oh, more wars are started over religion," and actually it's not true because most wars are started over territory. But that is true. So we're not done yet. But I'll make the argument that religion overall, long term, has brought tremendously positive effects. And yes, and we have our issues, we have our disagreements, but ultimately, the idea of morality being an absolute, which is what religion preaches, that thing has done wonders for all societies. Yes, I agree. We're not done yet. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So there are secular universal moralities that have nothing to do with God.
Yeah, well, this is a good question. We could go down this hole and never emerge. This has been widely debated. This is the first time that you've had this discussion. I think that, yes, I think an atheist can have, well, I think there's room for debate. Whether an atheist can have a universal, I think I hear it both ways, but not because means I hear the argument that if an atheist by definition is someone who rejects completely the idea of any divine or orchestrated origin to anything, right? Thus rejecting the idea of a soul or rejecting the idea of a purpose. Thus we can. Why not? Because if it's all random, then how could it be purpose? It's just true, but ultimate purpose, absolute purpose, like you would say. You said absolute morals. I'm saying absolute purpose cannot exist if you don't believe in God. Yes, Zoe.
No, well, you can if you're in an accident, then your purpose is to keep perpetuating accidents. That's what the scientific community would say anyway. So there's not necessarily.
Yes, but is that absolute or not? That's the question. Why would that be absolute?
Observable.
I understand, but if someone says, I think there's a logical argument to be made that if someone really takes the argument of being an atheist to its fullest extent, then they have to be a nihilist. They have to be someone that, I think there's an argument to be made. On the other hand, I think that even someone who thinks they're an atheist has a soul. if I believe in God, I believe everyone has a soul, and even atheists have souls. Thus, and I say that the soul is what's going to stir someone to have purpose in life. And I think the soul's also linked to the idea of God and the idea of Torah and the idea of absolute morality. That's why I do think that unknowingly the atheist does kind of fulfill this idea in a weird way, in this ironic way. Yeah, it's frustrating to hear, I know. Okay, so we live in this. Oh my gosh, I see we have only 8 minutes left. I'll try to do this real quickly. So we live in this world where this is all big picture, cosmic, meaning and all fine and dandy. What does it mean for us? Or better yet, what about a human and physiologically, what makes us ignore God and how do we undo that? And how does the Torah help us in fulfilling that? So everyone's here familiar with the idea of a soul and the body and the interrelationship? Everyone's heard of those ideas, right? Okay, so we have this soul, and according to Jewish writings, the soul is this incredible spiritual force that the Talmud itself puts on the same pedestal of holiness as God, which is crazy to even say that. And then we have this body, which is physical, makes us no different on our body side from an animal. And what is the more dominant? What's the default state of humans? Is that of a body. So we have this unholy or uneasy coexistence, marriage, if you will, of these two opposite extremes. We have this godly soul, this total spiritual, something which is incredibly close to God on one hand, but that is buried under the power of our bodies on the other hand. Thus, if we want to bring the idea of God out to the world, we're going to have to harness the power of our souls. We're going to have to figure out a way to make the influence of the soul, or the power, or the just the inspiration of the soul shine forth. But the problem is that the soul is muffled and muzzled by this powerful body. So that's how in Judaism we view this relationship of the body and the soul. The soul is there, but it's buried beneath this mountain of the body that's overwhelming. How do we know it's overwhelming? If you have no link to the senses, there's no sensory link to the soul. Okay? As an example, if you shake a lulav on the holiday of Sukkot, right? So you have this lulav, you got these branches, and you're holding the citron, and you shake it. That's a mitzvah of the Torah. Shake the lulav. What do you feel? You feel nothing. You feel a little weird. You feel a little awkward. Like, what are you doing? It's not linked to your senses. You eat matzah. What are you doing? You're chewing crackers. Right? I gave that example last time. Right? That's how we feel with mitzvahs. Because it's spiritual, so we don't feel that. As opposed to you drink the glass of water, well, that you feel. Right? We feel what our body feels, but we don't feel what our soul feels. Thus, the biggest obstacle, the biggest impediment for us to bring forth the idea of God into the world is our body. If we're to chip away the influence of the body, what happens? You know what happens? The power of our soul comes forth. Thus, Tikkun Olam happens via our soul penetrating or overcoming, overwhelming the influence of the body. Open up the Torah. What does the Torah say? You open the Torah. It says restriction number 1, restriction number 2, restriction number 3. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. Right? Withhold this pleasure. Right? Do this thing which is difficult. Right? Strain yourself in this way. That's what the Torah is. And we're being told, we're being sold that this book is going to bring the world to perfection. It's going to this is the manual for saving mankind. How does that work? The Torah and its restrictions are God's manual for suppressing, quelling, and squelching the influence of your body. When your body wants something, the Torah says, you know what? No. Don't have that cheeseburger. But the body wants. But you say no. You suppress. And you weaken the power of the body. And concurrently, you strengthen the power of the soul. And you do this time and time again. The Torah is this one after another, restriction, but that weakens the body and empowers the soul. And as the result, if you look at the end, if you actually follow this plan that the Torah outlines, you know what you'll have? What will it look like at the end? At the end, you'll be someone whose soul is now demonstrating the idea of God. You'll have a fixed world on a small scale and helping to contribute to the entire purpose of humanity. You're fixing the world in a small way. And as a nation, we were given this Torah, these instructions that are very prohibitive, they're very difficult. And it's very strict, and there's so many laws, and it makes our life, you would argue, our body's life is worse off. You know, what we can eat, what we could do on Shabbat, who we could sleep with, all these restrictions. You know, our bodies, it's worse off for our body, for sure. Right? But doing that weakens that vise that our body has on our consciousness, and it empowers our soul, and suddenly what happens, the power of the soul is able to shine forth. Go ahead. Well, okay, we feel it maybe on an emotional level, but not on a sensory level for sure. I was trying to demonstrate that it's less. Well, that's. Well, Jonathan, if you were here last week, you would have heard that I mentioned that on Yom Kippur, actually what does happen is that there is this kind of suppression of the body, by dint of the day itself. So it's a very good point. 2 weeks ago, last time I spoke here, I'm sorry. Either way, I want to just bring this idea to completion and just point out something very cool here. So we have these 3 stages of bringing the world of Tikkun Olam. We have Abraham starts it off, he's the idea. We have Moses who's the one who introduces it to the entire world. Right? Oh, I'm sorry, to our nation. He gives us the Torah. And we have this Messiah character that's going to ultimately complete the job of teaching it to the entire world. We find, very curiously, scattered throughout Jewish literature, we find descriptions of the mode of transportation of these 3 characters. And who here knows, Johnny, you might know, right? Is anyone here familiar with the unique mode of transportation that these 3 individuals share? Anyone knows? We're told about 3 people in Jewish writings that they ride on a donkey. Ever heard of that? Huh? Messiah. Well, Abraham, he's riding the chamor in Genesis. Moses, he comes to Egypt on a donkey, and we know Messiah is rochev al chamor. We know that. And in fact, once you dig a little deeper in Jewish sources, it's actually the same donkey. Let's hold off on that. Okay, that's the rebuttal, but I have a rebuttal to the rebuttal, so I don't know what that's even called. That's a good question. We'll get to Bilam in a second. Chamor, we know, it symbolizes chomer. The word chomer means materialism, right? Ron could verify that. Chomer is always linked to the physical. We know that the donkey is a very physical-centric animal. So we're told Abraham, Moses, and Messiah, they achieve what they achieve because they were on top of the donkey. They suppressed, they will overcome their donkey. Their donkey, which is their physicality, right? They're materialistic, they were on top of it, they were over it, right? Thus, their power of their soul was able to shine forth and to create this wonderful insight and inspiration for the entire world, right? To have the power of the soul shine forth because they suppressed their donkey. Now, someone mentioned Bilam. What do we know about Bilam's relationship with his donkey? First of all, we know he had a conversation with his donkey. When you have a conversation with someone, you're on the same level. Additionally, we're told in the Talmud makes this very clear, in several places, that Bilam actually slept with his donkey. Yes. And that it's, once again, sources.
It's written where?
It's in the book of Sanhedrin, same Sanhedrin. This is I believe it's 105. But I think Rashi brings it as well. Rashi in the Torah quotes it. Bilam, he was on the same level as his donkey. So yes, he had a donkey. Perhaps maybe that's telling us that he had the same potential as Moses, right? Perhaps that's a good argument to be made. But we do know from several sources that he was on the same level as the donkey. He was not over the donkey by any means. But this, once again, this demonstrates that the idea of Tikkun Olam, the idea of bringing out the power of the soul, that happens when you overcome, when you suppress your instincts. Let me just I didn't even get to what I wanted to get to. This is all an introduction. Either way, so let me just try to close it. Kind of know we have a firm deadline here. what are we taking away? First of all, we're learning a deep insight into big picture. Like, what's this all about? This entire universe, right? In Judaism, we're told there's a beginning and there's an end, right? Everyone seems to agree already that there is a beginning. That's pretty wonderful. It's a relatively recent development. All of humanity has agreed there's a beginning. In Judaism, say that there's an end. Now, what happens after the end? That is unclear necessarily. What happens in the Messianic era? Does the world change or not? It seems very clear the world does not change. But there's a certain maturation that the world achieves. What that is maybe a separate topic. But either way, this kind of ups the ante in what our goal is in life. Like, we're here on a mission. Our mission is a mission of Tikkun Olam, fixing the world. The world's broken. How is this demonstrated in our lives? Via the influence that we have of the physicality that blinds us. We don't see God because we're not linked to that. We have this disassociation of our soul, and therefore we don't see God. And then you know what? And then comes along the Torah. Torah says, you know what? I'll give you lots of these restrictions, and we don't understand why I have to do these restrictions. And we ask, is it not really care what we eat? Is it really so important to God? That's a good question. But now we understand a little bit about why. Like, what does this do for us? How does this improve our life? What's the link between the Torah and its commandments and restrictions, and how does it bring us towards the end game? Now we know that part of what the Torah does, there's more to it. A part of what the Torah does is to suppress and restrict, indeed. And that's what you sign up for. But we have to do it because we're the nation that has this national mission of fulfilling Tikkun Olam. If we don't do it, right, if we don't fulfill this, who knows? It's a disaster. And we have to, there's no option for failure. We have to do it. We accept it upon ourselves. We're the descendants of Abraham. We're the chosen people. And in fact, more precisely, we chose God. Abraham chose God. It's very important to realize this distinction. It wasn't like Abraham arbitrarily was chosen. He was chosen because he was one who accepted upon himself this responsibility. But we, as a nation, at Sinai, and as Abraham's descendants, and you know what? As just our character. Like we mentioned, Jews are driven. Where does that come from? Because we're the ones who are descendants of Abraham, and we're the ones who have accepted upon themselves this responsibility. Thus, we are wired to change the world. Right? And the Torah is our guide. And you know what? It's not easy. No one's going to argue that it's easy. But at least we have a picture about what the end game here is, and what does the world look like. And you know what? I think we can make the argument that we're already kind of close to the finish line. The world. Yes, you look at the news and watch the television, newspaper. It doesn't see. All you see is the bad. But if you just, open a history book and find out what it was like under the Romans 2,000 years ago, right? The world's a lot better now, and the idea of God is a lot more clear to us. But we still have a ways to go. So that's that, guys. And thank you all. Any questions? Anyone wants to? I'm just trying to rankle Rabbi Johnny because he wants to. He's like, we got it.
I'm good.
So if anyone has anything you want to share, now's the time. Okay, fantastic, everyone. Let's go get some food.
Okay, guys. Before everybody stay seated for 1 second, I have to make a few big amendments. Thank you, Zoe, for joining us. Everybody say hi to Zoe.